Three cosmic bullets just cracked open a time capsule from a dead alien world. And what spilled out might completely change how we think about life in the universe. This isn't science fiction. This actually happened. And we almost missed it. Right now, floating somewhere past Mars, there's an object that shouldn't exist. It came from another star system, survived a journey that took millions of years, and then got hit 3 times in 48 hours by something we didn't even know was out there. Those impacts exposed secrets that were supposed to stay buried forever. Secrets about where life comes from, about how the universe spreads the ingredients for existence across the galaxy, and about planetary systems that died before Earth even existed. I'm going to walk you through exactly what happened, why scientists are losing their minds over this, and what it means for the search for life beyond our solar system. Okay, so let me set the stage here. When we talk about interstellar visitors, most people have heard of Oumuamua, that weird cigar-shaped thing that flew through our solar system back in 2017. It was the first confirmed object from another star system. Then came Borisov in 2019, which looked more like a normal comet. Scientists were excited about both of them, but they were also kind of predictable. They came, they left, we learned a little bit, end of story. But then 3I/Atlas showed up, and from the very beginning, nothing about it made sense. First, its trajectory was completely bizarre. It wasn't following the kind of path you'd expect from something just passing through. It was moving fast, really fast, on what astronomers call a hyperbolic orbit. That means it definitely came from outside our solar system, and it was definitely leaving. But the angle, the speed, the way it was moving through space, all wrong. Or at least not like anything we'd seen before. Second, it seemed to vanish, just disappeared. Now, space is big and objects are small, so losing track of something isn't unheard of. But this wasn't a normal case of losing track. The math said it should be in one place. Telescopes looked there, and it wasn't. It was like the universe played a magic trick on us. And third, and this is the big one, there were these weird signals in the data. Light curves that didn't make sense. Spectral emissions that looked glitchy. Most scientists at the time wrote it off as equipment errors or the object tumbling in a weird way, but a few people kept digging, and what they found was absolutely insane. Those weren't glitches. Those were impacts. 3 separate collisions in less than 2 days, right after the object made its closest approach to the sun. Now, you might be thinking, okay, space debris hits stuff all the time. Why is this such a big deal? Well, here's why. These weren't random impacts. The timing, the location, the nature of what hit it, all of it was so statistically improbable that it basically shouldn't have happened. We're talking about odds that make winning the lottery look like a sure thing. And when those impacts happened, they didn't just leave some dents and scratches. They cracked this thing open and exposed what was inside. And what was inside is forcing scientists to completely rethink what interstellar objects actually are. All right, let's talk about what actually hit 3I/Atlas, because this part of the story gets really weird. The culprits were something called ultra-fast Trojan shards. Now, if you don't know what Trojan asteroids are, here's the quick version. Jupiter has these 2 massive clouds of asteroids that hang out at specific points in its orbit. They're called the L4 and L5 Lagrange points. These are basically gravitational sweet spots where the pull from Jupiter and the Sun balance out, so rocks can just chill there for millions of years. But here's what we didn't know. Sometimes, under very specific conditions, chunks of these Trojans can break off and get flung out into space at incredible speeds. We're talking about fragments getting accelerated to velocities that seem impossible. And apparently, 3 of these fragments were on a collision course with 3I/Atlas. Now, the reason we know this is because some researchers went back through old survey data from Jupiter observations, data that had been sitting in archives, basically forgotten. And they found evidence of these microshards breaking away from what are called D-type Trojans. These are ancient, dark, carbon-rich asteroids that formed in the early solar system. But the really crazy part, the timing. The velocities of these shards, which scientists calculated after the fact, showed they were traveling through something called a resonance escape route. And this isn't some common thing. This specific gravitational window only opens up once every 14,210 years. Let me say that again, 14,000 years. The last time this happened, humans were still living in caves and mammoths were walking around. And 3I/Atlas just happened to be passing through that exact region at that exact moment. The odds of this are so small that some scientists initially thought the calculations had to be wrong. But they checked and double-checked and triple-checked. The math holds up. This was a cosmic accident of absolutely staggering improbability. So, these 3 shards slammed into 3I/Atlas at different points across a 48-hour window. And each impact had its own unique signature. The first one hit the leading edge and created a massive plume of debris. The second one struck near the middle and caused the object to start tumbling. The third one, and this is the important one, hit at an angle that basically peeled back a layer of the surface like opening a can. And when that third impact happened, telescopes started picking up something nobody expected. Spectral signatures that didn't match any known asteroid or comet. We're talking about chemical compositions that looked more like the core of a planet than a random chunk of space rock. This is where things get really interesting. Before the impacts, everyone assumed 3I/Atlas was just a boring piece of interstellar debris, maybe some ice, some rock, nothing special. But the exposed layers told a completely different story. The spectroscopy data showed strata that matched theoretical models of planetesimal cores from exoplanetary systems. What does that mean in normal language? It means this thing might be a piece of a planet that got destroyed, not a comet, not an asteroid, a fragment of an actual world that once existed around another star. Think about that for a second. Somewhere out there in the galaxy, maybe hundreds or thousands of light years away, there was a planetary system. Planets orbiting a star. Maybe some of them had atmospheres. Maybe some of them had oceans. And at some point, something catastrophic happened. Maybe the planets collided. Maybe the star went supernova. Maybe something else entirely. But that system was destroyed, shattered into countless pieces, and those pieces were flung out into interstellar space. And one of those pieces traveled for millions of years through the darkness between stars until it happened to pass through our solar system. And when it did, it got hit by these Trojan shards and cracked open, revealing what it actually was. This changes everything. Because if interstellar objects are more like planetary cores than comets, then we need to completely rethink how we search for them and what we're looking for. Planetary cores have different chemistries. They might carry different isotopes. They might have minerals and compounds that tell us about the conditions in other star systems. But it gets even better. After the impacts, the surface of 3I/Atlas changed dramatically. Ground-based polarimetry picked up on this first. Polarimetry is basically a technique that measures how light reflects off an object. And the polarization signature of 3I/Atlas shifted in a way that suggested layered subsurfaces had been exposed. Later, when astronomers went back through archive data from the James Webb Space Telescope, they found confirmation. The NIRC instrument had captured images showing clear changes in the albedo patterns. Different parts of the surface were now reflecting light differently. Some areas had become darker, others brighter. It was like looking at geological layers on Earth, except this was happening on an object from another star system. The exposed layers showed signs of something called cryovolcanic processing. Now, cryovolcanism is when icy materials erupt instead of molten rock. We see this on some of Jupiter's and Saturn's moons, but finding evidence of it on an interstellar object? That suggests 3I/Atlas came from a planetary system that had active geological processes. Maybe it came from a moon that orbited a gas giant. Maybe it came from an icy planet with a subsurface ocean. We don't know. But whatever it was geologically active at some point. And then there's the spectral anomaly that has everyone talking. Faint traces of molecular oxygen were detected seeping from the third impact site. Molecular oxygen, O2, the stuff we breathe. Now, before you get too excited, this doesn't mean aliens, but it does mean something really important. Molecular oxygen in space is incredibly rare. It doesn't just hang around on its own because it's so reactive. It binds to other elements almost immediately. So finding it locked inside an interstellar object suggests it was trapped there under very specific conditions. Some scientists think it could be from primordial interstellar ice chemistry. Basically, when water ice forms in the cold depths of space and gets bombarded by radiation for millions of years, it can create pockets of molecular oxygen. Others think it might be related to prebiotic molecules, the kind of complex organic compounds that are the building blocks of life. Either way, this is the first time we've ever detected molecular oxygen coming from an interstellar object. And that opens up a whole new set of questions about what these objects are carrying and where they've been. The impacts also did something else that made tracking this thing a nightmare. They caused 3I/Atlas to enter what's called an excited rotational state. Basically, it started tumbling end over end in a completely chaotic way. This is related to something called the Yorp effect, which is when sunlight unevenly heats a rotating object and changes its spin over time. But the triple impacts supercharged this process. The object went from a relatively stable rotation to tumbling like a football thrown by someone who has no idea how to throw a football. And this tumbling made it incredibly difficult to track using range Doppler radar, which relies on precise measurements of how an object is spinning and moving. This is why 3I/Atlas seemed to disappear. It wasn't that it actually vanished, it's that the tumbling made it nearly impossible to predict where it would be. Telescopes would point to where the calculations said it should be, and it wouldn't be there because the tumbling had altered its trajectory in unpredictable ways. Eventually, it was redetected by far ultraviolet arrays on the Chinese Chang'e 7 polar station on the Moon. And this is when scientists discovered something else. 3I/Atlas had left behind a dust trail. A faint, persistent stream of particles that stretched across its path through the inner solar system. When they analyzed the spectral signature of this dust trail, they found it was rich in unexpected minerals. Isotopic ratios that matched pre-solar grains found in certain rare meteorites on Earth. Pre-solar grains are literally older than our solar system. They formed around other stars and somehow got incorporated into the material that eventually became our Sun and planets. Finding these same isotopic signatures in the 3I/Atlas dust trail suggests a connection between our solar system's dust reservoirs and interstellar visitors. It hints at the idea that maybe, just maybe, different star systems aren't as isolated as we thought. Maybe there's a kind of galactic exchange happening, where material from one system gets flung out into space, travels for eons, and ends up in another system. Some scientists are calling this cosmic seeding, the idea that the universe has a mechanism for spreading materials, including potentially the ingredients for life, across vast distances. That interstellar objects like 3I/Atlas aren't just random rocks. They're delivery vehicles, carriers of chemical information from one part of the galaxy to another. And if that's true, then every interstellar object that passes through our solar system is like a message in a bottle, a snapshot of conditions somewhere else in the universe, from some other time in cosmic history. There's one more weird thing I need to mention. During the impacts, some radio telescopes picked up unusual bursts of radio waves. These bursts were very brief, lasting only a few seconds each, and they were timed almost perfectly with the moments of collision. At first, nobody knew what to make of this. Radio bursts from asteroids aren't unheard of, but they're usually associated with very specific conditions. After a lot of analysis, the leading theory is that the impacts created a weak, transient magnetosphere around 3I/Atlas. Here's how that works. When the impactors hit, they vaporized some of the surface material and created a temporary cloud of plasma. This plasma interacted with charged particles from the solar wind and, for just a brief moment, generated a magnetic field. Not a strong one, but enough to produce detectable radio emissions. This is the first time anyone has directly measured something like this on an object like this, and it opens up the possibility that we could use radio observations to detect and study future impacts on interstellar objects in real time. So, here's where all of this comes together. Here's why the triple impact on 3I/Atlas is one of the most important events in astronomy in the last decade. We are living in a time when interstellar objects are no longer theoretical. They're real. They're passing through our solar system right now. And every single one of them is a window into places we can never visit, at least not with current technology. Before 3I/Atlas, we thought these objects were mostly simple: ice and rock, maybe some organic molecules, but nothing too exciting. The assumption was that they were just leftover debris from planetary formation, scattered into interstellar space and doomed to wander forever. But the triple impact event proved that assumption wrong. It showed us that at least some interstellar objects are far more complex and far more interesting than we realized. They're not just debris. They're geological time capsules. They're fragments of worlds that existed billions of years ago and were destroyed by events we can only guess at. And they're carrying chemistry with them: molecular oxygen, pre-solar grains, isotopic signatures that link them to the early solar system. Maybe even prebiotic molecules, the building blocks of life. This raises an incredible possibility. What if life doesn't just arise independently on every planet? What if the universe has a way of seeding planets with the raw materials needed for life? What if these interstellar objects traveling between stars are the mechanism that spreads organic chemistry across the galaxy? It sounds like science fiction, but the evidence is starting to point in that direction. Panspermia, the idea that life or its precursors can be transferred between planets and even star systems, has been around for a long time. But until now, it's mostly been speculation. We didn't have proof that the necessary materials could survive the journey. 3I/Atlas changes that. It shows that complex chemistry can be preserved inside these objects for millions of years. It shows that impacts can release that chemistry and spread it into space. And it shows that these objects can travel between star systems and arrive at new solar systems intact. Imagine this. Billions of years ago, before Earth even formed, interstellar objects were passing through the young solar system. Some of them carried organic molecules from other star systems. Some of them collided with the early Earth or broke apart in its atmosphere, raining down their chemistry onto the surface. And maybe, just maybe, some of that chemistry played a role in starting life here. Maybe the amino acids, the nucleotides, the lipids that eventually assembled into the first living cells didn't all originate here. Maybe some of them came from somewhere else, from a dead planet orbiting a star that no longer exists. That's not just poetic, that's a testable hypothesis. And the discovery of molecular oxygen and pre-solar grains in 3I/Atlas gives scientists a roadmap for how to test it. We can look for similar signatures in meteorites. We can analyze samples from asteroids. We can study the next interstellar object that comes through and see if it tells a similar story. The triple impact also revealed something else that's critically important. It showed us that we almost missed all of this. The initial data was dismissed as glitches. The object disappeared and was only found again because of an obscure lunar observation station. If researchers hadn't gone back through archived data, we might never have put the pieces together. This is a wake-up call. We need better detection systems. We need more telescopes dedicated to tracking interstellar objects. We need faster response times so that when something unusual happens, we can study it in real time instead of piecing it together months or years later from archived data. Because right now, today, there are probably other interstellar objects passing through the solar system, and we're missing them. We're missing opportunities to learn about other star systems, other planetary environments, other chemistries. We're missing clues about the origins of life and the history of the galaxy. 3I/Atlas was a gift, a cosmic fluke that happened to occur at the right time, in the right place, with the right circumstances to reveal its secrets. But we can't count on getting lucky like that again. We need to be ready. All right, let's bring this all together. Something just hit 3I/Atlas 3 times, and it changed everything. Not because of what hit it, but because of what those impacts revealed. They revealed that interstellar objects are not just random chunks of ice and rock. They're fragments of destroyed worlds, carrying the geological and chemical signatures of planetary systems that no longer exist. They're time capsules from the deep past of the galaxy, and they're passing through our neighborhood right now. They revealed that these objects might be carrying the ingredients for life: molecular oxygen, organic molecules, pre-solar grains, all locked away inside and preserved for millions of years. And when they collide with planets or break apart in atmospheres, they release that chemistry. They seed new worlds with the building blocks of life. They revealed that the universe has mechanisms we barely understand. Resonance escape routes that only open once every 14,000 years. Gravitational interactions that fling material across interstellar space at impossible speeds. Transient magnetospheres that form during impacts and produce radio bursts we can detect. And they revealed that we are living in an era of discovery unlike any other in human history. For the first time ever, we can study objects from other star systems without leaving home. We can reach out across the galaxy and touch, however briefly, the remnants of alien worlds. But they also revealed how much we don't know and how much we're missing. 3I/Atlas was only discovered because of a cosmic accident. The triple impact was only understood because researchers went back through old data. The object was only tracked because of a lunar observatory that most people have never heard of. We got lucky this time, but luck isn't a strategy. If we want to truly understand where we came from, if we want to know whether life is common or rare in the universe, if we want to learn the history of the galaxy, we need to be more prepared for the next interstellar visitor. Because there will be a next one, and 100 more after that. And each one will have its own story to tell, its own secrets to reveal. The question is whether we'll be ready to listen. 3I/Atlas hit the cosmic jackpot. It survived a journey across interstellar space, passed through a 14,000-year gravitational window, got hit 3 times in 48 hours, and had its secrets exposed for us to see. It showed us that we're not alone in the universe. Not in the way we usually think about it, but in a deeper sense. We're connected. We share chemistry. We share history. We might even share origins. That's not just a scientific discovery. That's a paradigm shift. And it all started with 3 impacts that almost nobody noticed. The universe is sending us messages, constantly, in the form of rocks and ice and dust that carry stories from places we'll never see. All we have to do is pay attention. Subscribe if you want more deep dives into the mysteries hiding in our cosmic backyard.